Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Flipside series. So, I'm Hirni Dias, and I'm the Vice Chairperson of the Pick a Book Teens Club, and I'll be the moderator for today's Flipside. So, I'll start with two questions. So, what is Pick a Book? Pick a Book is an initiative that encourages the habit of reading, hoping to create a community of like minded people and spread positive social interactions throughout the community. So the next question would be, what is a flip side? So a flip side is where two panelists give their ideas and opinions on two separate books on a question and answer basis. So let's move on to introducing our panelists. So the first panelist for today is Sehendu Gamage. So he is 16 years old and is currently studying for his A levels. Some of his favorite book genres are nonfiction and thrillers. He is the chairperson of the Pick a Book Teens Club. So welcome, Sehendu.
Thank you, Hirani.
So our second panelist for today is Directional Jishnadav. So he is 14 years old. He mostly reads fiction, and he loves to listen to music in his pastime for his pastime. So he loves to meet new people and try out new things as well. He is the digital coordinator of the Pick a Book Teens Club. So welcome, Jishnu. Okay.
Apparently, he's having a connection issues.
Yes. So till Jishnu is able to join in, Sehendu, let's talk about the book Sehendu is going to be talking about. So the book is The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. So this book illustrates how you don't need to be incredibly intelligent or unique to have the success you want. You simply need to think in a way that cultivates success. By thinking big, you can motivate yourself to improve your work life, earn more money, and get more happiness and fulfillment out of life. So, the book Jishnu will be talking about is The Confessions of a Public Speaker by Scott Berkun. So, the author and professional speaker, Scott Berkun, reveals the techniques behind what great communicators do and shows how anyone can learn to use them well. So, let's move on with the questions. Welcome, Jishnu. So, moving on to the questions. My first question goes out to Sehendu. So, what are the common forms of excuses and how do we overcome them?
Right. Before I answer that question, just a quick brief about the book. So, The Magic of Thinking Big, as it suggests by the title, it's about thinking big. So, by the end of the book, what the author wants us to have achieved is to get out of that caged kind of thinking that way. He wants us to think out the box. A lot of people miss out on a lot of opportunities because they just think small. They don't think they can accomplish certain things. And I'm here to say, well, David Schwartz is here to say, and I'm here to say to you, please start thinking big, because you never know what you're capable of until you start thinking out the box and thinking big. To answer your question, Yuni, the four most common types of excuses, according to David Schwartz, is 1, but my health isn't good. 2, but you've got to have brains to succeed. 3, I'm too old or too young. And fourth one, I'm different. My case is different. I attract bad luck. I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard these excuses. These are just excuses. And I'm going to tell you how to overcome these excuses if you are having to face them, right? So the first one, but my health isn't good. Refuse to talk about your health unless otherwise you are speaking to a doctor, right? Let's say you have a back pain, for example, and now you got medication and you're all good, and you go to the doctor, you're all good, right? He gives you meds, and you constantly complain to your friends, I have a backache, like we know, you are aware that you have a backache, but just ranting about it help? No. And that's an excuse. You use that as an excuse. So your friend asks you to go for a jog, my back hurts. That's an excuse right there. I mean, constantly talking about it isn't going to help it. So don't. And then, but you've got to have brains to succeed. So the ability to think is greater than the ability to memorize facts. You might think your classmate is smarter than you because he scores more in history test than you, but you might score more in a maths test than him, because memorizing facts doesn't mean you're smart. Everyone can do that. That's memory dumping. You just got to memorize it and then dump it out. Just because someone can do that doesn't mean they're smarter than you. So always remember that if you can think, the ability to think, that's greater than the ability to memorize facts. And I'm too old, I'm too young. That excuse is too common. We hear that from a lot of people. Either it's when you want to start a business, it's I'm too young to start a business, or it's I'm too old, I passed my age to start a business. Invest your future time in what you really want to do. And my case is different. I attract bad luck. If you look closely, luck is mostly planning, preparation, and positive thinking. You repeat that, and that's according to David Schwartz, luck is non-existent. It's planning, preparation, and positive thinking. So that's all the common forms of excuses and how you overcome them.
Thank you, Sehandu. So my next question is for Jishnu. So how can we survive the attack of the butterflies?
So before I answer that question, a brief introduction about the book. So Confessions of a Public Speaker, the one quality I really like about the book is that it's not just basically talking about just harping on about one thing. It discusses about various ideas that the author has, and it kind of gives us his life story as well, very hilarious moments of his story. So that's one thing about the book. Now, to answer your question, how can we survive the attack of the butterflies? So it took me quite a while to realize what this meant, but then I finally got it. It actually meant the stage sensation, the feeling that we get when we go out on our own up there and are asked to talk about ourselves or in front of everyone. So how can we overcome them? So one of the main ways you can overcome this stage sensation, the attack of the butterfly, is to regulate these basic practices such as getting to the venue early and knowing your stage setting, the stage around you and how it looks. And also the most important thing is to look from an audience's perspective. An audience's perspective is very, very important to understand what your audience looks, how the audience looks at you, and how they look towards you. So that's one thing you could improve on. And this feeling, if you were to regulate these practices, then that would result in you knowing the difference between this state sensation and learning how to control it. So most people have heard about how a dog chases squirrels. So it's said that a dog chases squirrels because it's trying to protect its owner. So nobody can blame a dog for that. Just like that situation, we can never really blame an audience for looking at you in a weird way. You can't just go and blame an audience. That's an excuse, like Sam stated. So you need to learn how to overcome that excuse and move on. You need to move on and learn how to survive the attack of the butterflies, how to survive the fear of going out. So that's basically it.
Thank you, Jishnu. I'm sure many of us have been attacked by butterflies, so to speak. So that was very useful, I'm sure, for a lot of us. So I have another question for Sehandu. So, how do you build your confidence?
Right. So the author of this book, David Schwartz, made it really simple. And so in order to think big, you need to have confidence. I mean, without confidence, you're not going to be able to think big because you're going to be limiting yourself. And like I said earlier, you're going to be thinking in a cage. So to think outside the box, to think big, to do great things, you need confidence. How do you build that? Well, uh, I'm just going to quickly relate this to another book. I previously read a book called Beyond the Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And in that book, it stated that the subconscious mind, our mind, basically acts as a memory bank. That means when we say, I forgot something, you haven't necessarily forgotten it. It's just there. You just can't access it. You don't have access to it. So what the author says is deposit only positive thoughts in your memory bank. Now that doesn't mean, okay, I have an example for this. This is great, right? So let's say you have a pretty good day, a pretty decent day, and let's say 3 bad things happen to you throughout the day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the night. So let's say in the morning, you drop your breakfast. In the afternoon, you drop your phone. In the night, you trip and you fall. But you also got a raise that day, you got a promotion or something, you watch your favorite TV show, and something good happened. You spend time with the family. But because of those bad 3 things that happened to you, let's say a friend calls you in the night and asks you how your day was, you say, today was a bad day. Like, you tend to categorize that day as a bad day because you only deposited those negative thoughts in your memory bank. So that happens to us a lot. I mean, as I'm saying this, think, have you not done that? Like, had a perfect day and think it was a bad one just because of a few bad things that happened, right? One, deposit only positive thoughts in your memory bank. Two, only withdraw only positive thoughts from your memory bank. It's pretty simple. So the concept is pretty simple. Just focus on the good things that happen in life. That doesn't mean you should ignore the bad things. Learn from them, gain experience, and become smart every day. So deposit only positive thoughts, withdraw only positive thoughts. That's how you build confidence.
Thank you, Sahandu, for that very informative, enlightening answer. So, my next question is for Jishnu again. So, how does Scott Burkhan recommend you to work out tough rooms?
So basically, what tough rooms are is they are not rooms that you go to and see people glaring and staring at you. So let me quickly connect this with my first answer. So when I said about how you should always look at the stage setting and get an audience's perspective, it's the same with a tough room. The audiences may not even be trying to glare at you. They may just be looking at you and may even be smiling at you. You may not understand that. So, what you should do to work out tough rooms is you should always start small. Start small with the basic person who gives you a supporting smile when you forget a comment or when you forget a point or when something messes up. Just look at that one small person, then build up. Go to different people. Just don't concentrate on that exact person throughout the speech. It'll be really horrible. So, what you should do is start with that person, then you should continue to build big. And then finally, you'll be able to look around the room comfortably and change your posture, your speaking rate, your rhythm. And this would help you to work out tough rooms. One more thing you could remember when presenting in front of a tough room or room you think that is tough, you could just remember that no one in the audience is going to bring up a knife and kill you just because you said something bad. No one is going to come up and kill you. They are only there. They may think something, but why should you care about it? You did your best and you knew it. That's all you want. So that's how you could work out tough rooms.
Thank you, Jishnu. So, my next question is again for Sehandu. Uh, how do you develop your ideas?
Right. How do you develop your ideas? Well, Hune, how do I put this? Right. So at one point in life, we've all had ideas. They would have either been a good one, bad one, creative ones that don't make sense. I mean, we're still teens, and as teens, we think a lot. We get a lot of creative ideas, and I personally am a very creative person. And everyone, from the day we are born, I mean, until we can think, until the day we die, we think and we get crazy ideas. I mean, all of us have thought, what if we could fly at one point? And we've thought about building this. I mean, I personally thought about building this machine that could make you fly. I mean, as kids, we just have these fantasies, right? And they're just ideas. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean every idea that you get is going to be a good one. At one point in life, I watched action movies and I thought, oh, what if I rob a bank? That's not a good idea, but it's an idea. So how do we differentiate good ideas and bad ideas? And how do we eliminate the bad ones and cultivate the good ones? So don't let your ideas escape. Whenever you get an idea, let's say when you're in school or something, right? And you get an idea and you think, okay, I'll remember it later. Don't. Just take a piece of paper, a notebook or something, a pen or pencil, just write it down because you don't want to forget that idea because it's not coming back. Some of these ideas, you just get great ideas and you don't remember what it was. Like you forget in a minute. So whenever you get an idea, grab a hold of it, don't let it go. Next, when you have time, it doesn't have to be exactly at that time. Now that you have it saved, you have written it down, when you have time, review your idea. So what was the idea that I had, like, and then you have to focus on where did it come from. Did I see it in a TV show? Did I get it from a friend? Try to find out what the source of the idea was. So you need to really think it through. What is the idea, where it came from, and then you need to decide if it's a good one or a bad one. So example, robbing a bank, bad idea, that's out the door, get it out. And flying machine, good idea, but quite impossible. Might want to focus on something that's actually possible. Get it out. Getting better grades in school, good idea. Cultivate and fertilize your idea. So if your idea is good and you feel in your heart that that idea is good, go for it. And then if you want to ask your friends, ask your family, let them know. I mean, don't be shy. We are all creative and we get these ideas. Maybe you want to start a business, whatever it is, seek inspiration and then do your research and so on. So that's all cultivating the idea. Before you start cultivating it, before you start cultivating the idea of, let's say, robbing a bank, first ask your friends or your family, is that a good idea or a bad one? And yeah, if it's a good one, start cultivating it. And that's how you develop your ideas.
Thank you, Sehandu. So, my next question again is for Jishnu. So, what's the funniest disaster story about the author, and what can be a countermeasure we can use in that situation?
So the author mentions lots of funny disaster stories throughout the book, but what I would say the funniest was he mentions a web expo which he goes to, and this is how he starts off. So he had hours of preparing. It was a 10-minute speech. He had to be on time, give a 10-minute speech, and the funny thing was a big crowd had turned up for him to do his speech. And he mentioned this throughout the book, so that people know that he doesn't get much of a crowd for a speech. So this was one of the biggest speeches of his life. And as soon as he gets there, after all of this preparing, practicing, and all of that, he gets there. They give him a fancy mic and they tell him to go up on stage. So as soon as he goes up on stage, he gives a very big entrance. He walks down, he shows off his hands, he walks up there, and then as soon as he starts his slide, he realizes that he lost almost 1 minute of his speech. He had practiced for 10 minutes to be exact. And what does he do? He naturally, like everyone, even me, starts panicking. He starts panicking and he thinks what he should do, and he loses another minute. That's 2 minutes gone on flat. And then he starts improvising. He starts improvising. That's another 30 seconds. And with that, that speech turned out to be a disaster. So the author clearly tells us not to do this throughout his book. And we should practice. Practicing is a really good thing. You should always practice. But you should never practice to be perfect. Even if you are not perfect, you enjoy what you do. That's all you need. So you don't have to be perfect to always go up and do your best. So there's a funny quote he mentions, not a funny quote, it's an interesting quote. So he says, practice not for perfection, but for confidence. And with that, he also uses the reference that you should never go out and be ready to answer anything. You should have that doubt. You should have the feeling of doubt, but to a certain extent. That extent is what gives you the stability to go on. And this is one of the funniest disaster stories, I think, and also the first one in his book itself. So that's about it.
Thank you, Jishnu. I'm going to move on to a question for Sehandu. So, what are two errors we make with regard to intelligence?
Right. So there's two errors that we made with regard to intelligence. One is we underestimate our intelligence. Two, we overestimate the other's intelligence. Let me put this into an example so that you can better understand it. Right. So let's say, and I'm going to connect the thing that I said before. The ability to think is greater than the ability to memorize facts. Let's say there's a test in your class, and you have one of your classmates, and it's a history test, right? So he gets more marks than you, and you genuinely studied for the test, you focused, and you were committed to the test, and he gets way more marks than you, and you can't figure out why. Now, but then there's a maths test, and you get way more marks than him, and he genuinely studied, and he can't figure out why. But you guys don't talk about that, right? Naturally, you two are competing. Like, let's say you're the top two in the class, and you're competing, and you're not going to tell, "Hey, I studied. I'm disappointed. I'm sad." You're not going to tell each other that. I mean, naturally, right? So because he did better, and now forget about the maths test and like think about the history one, because he memorized facts and he was good at it, and you couldn't get enough marks, like you couldn't get marks like him, you underestimate your intelligence, right? You think, oh, I'm not smart. He did better than me. I mean, in reality, it's just two areas that both of you are different, equally skilled in, but the areas are different. Both of you are might be equally skilled, right? Now the other person, now you underestimate your intelligence and you overestimate their intelligence. You underestimate your intelligence because you got low marks, and you overestimate his intelligence because he got high marks than you. So you think, oh, he's way smarter than me. Now he thinks the same thing. Now can you see, in society everyone can think that, right? So a person at a lower level in the job can think maybe a manager is smarter than them. Maybe in reality, the manager doesn't even have as much qualifications that he does. Maybe he has a degree, he has everything. Maybe it's just the experience. Maybe it's because the manager was there for longer. But then that person tends to think, oh, he's smarter than me, he's better than me. That's why he's there. So to summarize again, the two errors that we make with regard to intelligence is we underestimate our intelligence and we overestimate the others. Don't do that. That's bad for you, and it doesn't help you crawl up the ladder of success. And that's not thinking big, basically.
Thank you, Sehandu. So the next question for Jishnu, why should we never eat the microphone?
So this is basically a very weird reference. Why should you not eat the microphone? I was very grossed out by this at the start, and he also says you should never lick the microphone. So what this basically means is that we worry about slides, we worry about notes when we do our presentations, we worry about many things, how we dress, how our in this situation I'm worrying about how my video looks. Okay, so we worry about plenty of things. So, what he means by never to eat the microphone is that when a good speaker goes up and he delivers a speech, he does everything perfectly, but he forgets to consider his audience, the people who have come so far to see him, and the people who are making him speak. That's eating the microphone. That's basically forgetting something that's essential, but you don't consider much. That's what he uses. That's why he uses microphone as a metaphor. So what you should do is, instead of worrying about all of this, you should always know to consider your audience as well. Maybe you could think about how a good audience would come up and give you counter arguments, what an audience would expect you to say, why what you would expect yourself to do. What would you expect a speaker to do if you were the audience? That's what you need to consider. If you're Now he uses this example quite a lot. I don't know why. He comes up and tells us about cheese. Okay, that's what he's going to speak about. That's his example for the whole chapter. So he says if a person is going to speak about cheese, then what he should do is, the first thing you should do is take a strong position in the title. You should have to do create a big impact in the title itself. The title is the main thing in the whole speech. And if you don't have a proper impact with that, then your speech is going to be a little bit shady to the audience. So even if your title is going to be cheese is important, it's got to be a good title, and the way you say it has to give the audience the feeling that this speech is going to be good. So that's the first thing you should do. And then the second thing maybe you could do is structureize your speech. By structureize, I mean tell your structure before you start the speech. So even if the audience miss out a part, they play something on their phone or do something on their phone or just look around, miss out something, they know where you are if you give the structure at the beginning itself. The third thing he tells you to do is make your points concise as possible. So by this he uses the reference never lick your microphone. Don't scratch the surface of the point. Go deeper into the point and explain it so the audience understand what you're trying to say. You're not there to speak so you understand. It's basically you're speaking so the audience understand. You have to always remember that when you go and speak. And then finally what you should do is remember the counter arguments the audience may bring up. So if you're talking about cheese, then you should know about anti-cheese as well, the counter arguments they may bring up. So these are the five things you should do, and you should give the audience what they expect. You should never eat the microphone. So that's what basically the author means by this weird reference.
Thank you, Jishnu. So I have my final question for Sehandu. So how do we build a successful environment?
Right. So first, I'll talk you through what an environment is. So most of us these days, we are all at home, right? So there's always going to be a place in your home that you spend the most time at. For me, it's my room. For you, it might be your hall, on the couch. For some person else, it might be their workroom. They might have a separate space for that. They might have a separate study space. That's basically your environment. But there are different environments, right? When you go to school, there's your classroom environment. When you go to a friend's place, that's their environment. And we tend to adapt to different environments, right? You don't speak at home the way you speak in school. You don't speak to your mom the way you speak to your friends. That's because your friends, you're in a different environment. With your mom, you're in a different environment. So that's what an environment is. So how do you build a successful environment? One, there are 6 points. One, be environment conscious. You need to really think about, are you in a healthy environment or are you not in a healthy environment? Are you in a toxic kind of, let's say, an environment that doesn't let you think big and holds you back and doesn't let you move forward in life, right? For example, let's say you might have a class environment that isn't that great. Maybe your home environment isn't that great. So be environment conscious. Where are you? What is the environment like? And is your environment around you changing? Make your environment work for you. Number two, you need to adapt your environment. You're not, let's say, you're not going to study on the couch. You might, but for prolonged study sessions, that's not going to work. You're going to have a table. You're going to have, if you're doing online classes, you're going to have a PC or a laptop or a phone. You're going to have your books in front of you. That's what it means, basically, from the bottom to the top. It can be from that to the color of the walls in your room. Does that help you focus? That's basically your environment. Then don't let others jealousy hold you back. Now, in your environment, in your friend circle, there might be people who are jealous of you. I mean, that happens when you move up the ranks. People tend to get jealous. You might not know it, but you watching this, you might have plenty of haters. We don't know, because you have something that they don't. You've accomplished something that they haven't. We never know. They're not going to tell us to our face. But when they make jabs at you and try to hold you down, don't let it get to you. Don't let them get you. Don't give them the satisfaction of holding you back. And get your advice from successful people. If you're going to start a business, for example, let's say a toy selling business or something, go to an expert. Go to someone who has already has a successful shop in this field and is doing plenty of good business. Get advice from them. Ask them. Never be afraid to ask. You need to get rid of your ego if you want to be successful. If you just think, oh, I'm the man, I know everything, that's not going to help you. You need to dump your ego if you want success. Throw thought poison out of your environment. Thought poison is basically negative thoughts, toxic thoughts, bad thoughts, um, thoughts with bad intentions. Get them out of your environment, because that's not going to help you improve your environment. And finally, go first class in everything you do. If you're going to do something, do it to the best. If you're going to think, set a goal, okay, I'm going to be in the top 3 of the class this term, commit to it. And just, you're not going to say, I'm going to be the top 3 in the class this term, and then just do nothing, watch YouTube, watch Netflix, play games all day. That's not going to help you achieve your goal. If you're going to do it, go ahead first and dive in and focus. So to sum it up, be environment conscious. Be very conscious about your environment. Make your environment work for you. Is your environment a healthy environment for you? So if it's your study environment, is that a good place that you're studying in right now? Everywhere is an environment. Don't let others jealousy hold you back. Just don't. Just like, forget them. Get your advice from successful people. Never be afraid to ask from successful people, right? Why do you think people go to Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, and us, I mean me, reading this book from David Schwartz? Why? Because we want to learn from them. So they're successful people. And Jishnu reading this book and then presenting it to you. Why do we read these self-help books? Because they know something that we don't, and they're successful, and we want to learn, and you want to learn. So get your advice from successful people. Throw thought person out of your environment. Get rid of negative thoughts. And whatever you do, do it the best that you can. That's how you build a successful environment.
Thank you, Sehandu. So I have the final question for Jishnu. So what can you do when things go wrong?
So before I get to that question, I'll just tell a little bit about me. Okay. So I think I'm more of a formal speaker. I can't speak like really cool, like really slow paced. I most likely shout most of the time when I speak. I'm a mostly formal speaker. So when I speak, I normally run out of breath most of the time. And this really affects the way I speak. So this is one of the ways things go wrong for me. So I need to get into a proper rhythm. I go into a proper rhythm and then I go beat by beat. I go from part, then remember to take a breath, then move on. So Scott Berkman mentions plenty of ways about how things can go wrong. He mentions it like a list, one by one, then gives a solution and how you can prevent it as well. So, one thing you could always consider when things go wrong is that you should never start panicking. Everyone starts panicking, and even I start panicking most of the time. But you should always have the confidence to not start panicking and start improvising on the spot. So, one of the ways your speech may go wrong is losing the track of time. That happens in most speeches. You lose the track of time and you go on without knowing how much time you have left, and you may have 3 points left to make to the audience, but you only have time for one. So what do? You naturally start to panic, and you should avoid this and move to a counter. So the solution the author provides us is that we should, instead of starting to panic and do all of that, in the future we can work on a rhythm, but in the immediate situation we could basically go ahead and let the audience choose. Quality is not always important. Sorry, sorry, my bad. Quantity is not always important. Okay, so your speech necessarily doesn't have to be big to have a good quality. So quantity is not always important. Quality is what's the basic thing that you need to understand. Some of the tips that he gives us to avoid things avoid things going wrong at the start itself is to not first, when you get a presentation to make, you basically go and sit on PowerPoint, and what do? You basically move around your mouse thinking, lying on a couch with your laptop thinking something. But that's not the way to start. You should go to a place, your mind, and think rather than starting from PowerPoint. Get comments and points from the audience as well after you finish those speeches. Get comments from them, that so that they know you're willing to learn, and also never put the audience behind your back. So these are some of the situations where things can go wrong, or when things do go wrong, the solutions that you can get from them. So another thing I want to mention is that even when things don't go wrong, you think they do go wrong. So for instance, if you want to know what I'm thinking right now, is that I'm thinking I didn't do that well in my first 4 questions. And I think that this question, I'm getting more and more used to the rhythm of how this session is going. And I'm starting to enjoy it. The first 4 questions, I was in a nervous wreck. Now I'm getting to enjoy it more and more. So I wanted to keep going. So I'm imagining things going wrong. You should always remember never to do that. Don't imagine things are going wrong. That could get you in a terrible mess. So all in all, what I want to say is that you you are the one who has the authority to decide what goes on in your mind. So if you think that things didn't go wrong, then everything would go perfectly. So that's the answer.
Thank you, Jishnu. So we have a comment from Facebook from Susan Kristen. She says, "Lovely to listen to y'all. All the best." So thank you, Susan Kristen. And so that brings it to the end of all the questions. So thank you to our two panelists who gave us very insightful answers and very useful, I'm sure, for a lot of us. So that brings us to the end of all our questions, and this is us signing out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.